Hi, Edwin. Welcome to the Impact Revolution channel. Thank you so much for making time for this. How are you doing?
I'm doing very good. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Edwin, normally we ask a couple of personal questions for the audience to know you a bit better. And then later we can go more to the professional business related interview questions. Is that okay?
Yes, that's actually perfect.
All right, cool. So, a Mexican living in Spain, all right, if you could wake up anywhere in the world tomorrow, Edwin, where it will be and why?
Oh, wow, this is very interesting. Definitely, there's this place called Koh Lanta Thailand, which is not touristic at all, but it's on the like still secluded side, and
Uh-huh.
there's nothing and no one, and still have like this forest and jungle beach. So it's kind of
Uh-huh.
like I really liked it when I was there for a week. So I will definitely love to wake up tomorrow there.
All right. How is called the island? I don't know if I've been
Uh,
there.
yeah, it's called Koh Lanta. So
Koh
Koh
Lanta. Ah.
and then Lantha, something like
Is
that.
in the south, in the west,
It's
southwest.
it's on the no, actually it's on the southeast. See, no, it's
Uh,
kind of like it's not touristic at all. So you got Phuket on the left, on the west.
yes.
On the other side, it's Koh Lanta.
Ah, okay. No, I went to Phuket, and then on the south, I went to an island. It was called something, but I don't remember. And it was very, very nice. It was very isolated as well, and was very cool. All right, great, great. Thailand is fun. Now the second question, Edwin, that I ask normally is, yes, if there is someone who really knows you very well and admires you highly, how will define who is Edwin Mata?
I mean, that's a weird question because I cannot judge myself. So I
Uh-huh.
no, I know what's hardworking,
Hard working, eh? All
very
right.
hardworking. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Thank you. I'm very curious because you are a three-way builder, right? And you are working as a CEO of tokenization of this company. I was wondering, what makes you go through this route, because I think it's not that common, right? That many web developers or educators or lawyers, even get to this kind of thing. So I was wondering what made you go to this route.
I was always, I mean, I was a lawyer, mixing technology and law.
Uh-huh.
So for me, kind of makes sense that to blend both. I mean, it sounds like it's very different, one thing from the other, but the reality is that there's a lot of similarities. In the end, is how you apply codes that things work, is how you apply law that things work.
Mhm.
So for me, it's not that different.
Uh-huh.
So I just wanted to innovate and make sure that law is not as people say it is. Kind of like people think that law is just one thing. It's black and white. It's never black and white. It's super gray in the end. I mean, there's a
Uh,
lot of opportunities out there. So I just wanted to open that kind of mentality to people saying that while law is applicable, there's a lot of variables involved. So that when you code, you do
uh,
affect many variables at once. So it's kind of like how I see it.
all right, interesting. And what would you say is your why? Why are you doing and continuing doing this, Edwin?
Yeah, because it's a never-ending job. Once I got into this, I don't think I don't find myself stopping anytime soon just because code keeps evolving. Now we're talking about obviously AI.
Uh,
Then we have to talk about uh, law is evolving because now we have to adapt to what technology allows it to do because everything is changing. So
hmm.
it's a never-ending job.
Very nice. I think, you are an educator and you know this really well, and you probably have to educate a lot of people to understand how everything this that for me or for many people is very abstract and is a bit unknown, right? And we can be ignorant in that sense. So I was wondering, how would you explain really what is blockchain or tokenization, and especially of what you're doing in simple words, like a child, if you could to explain to a child, how would you explain it?
It's in reality. there's various ways that we can say, but it's, you know what's a ledger? I mean, it's an accounting book, right? So you have a,
Uh-huh.
let's say you have a book where you write February 1st, 2022, receive invoice of 20 euros.
Uh-huh.
February 2, 2023, receive. So you start writing all your transactions as a ledger. That's accounting, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Uh, you own that in the sense that when you do that, it's privately based because it's your information or it's your database, but everything is very well structured.
Uh-huh.
When you use blockchain, it's like you open the book. So you allow everybody to read those transactions. And there's a
Mm,
lot of things happening there because if you have that information out there, other people can go and say like, oh, I know what happened February 1st, 2022, because it's written here. So I
mm,
don't have to go to Edwin Mata to ask the information. I can go to the blockchain, which is kind of like that open ledger. That's what it's called distributed ledger technology, because in the end, it's just one big database that
mm,
it's immutable because you cannot be changed in the future. And it allows people to understand what happened at a specific point in time. So it's kind of
mm.
like open information, an open database, and that allows many things to do.
Uh-huh. That's very interesting, right? And it takes the middleman and it has more transparency and everybody knows more about it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's transparent because it's public. So all the information, instead of me having my own private book that nobody can jump in, I
Mm-hmm.
have that open book which everybody can see. And many things that we use as intermediary is because the privacy allows or involves middlemen because there's a connection between who's providing the service and who's requesting the service. And the more opaque the services, the more it allows intermediary to interact because there's a
Mm,
possibility that for an intermediary to say like, hey, I'm gonna go talk to Edwin for that information so I can supply it to you. That's a middleman who's commissioning on the possibility of going to the private entity and saying, I need that information, and to the requester saying, I am gonna give you that information. So the
uh-huh.
middleman and the markets are created based on opacity. So when you start becoming more transparency, there's no more middlemen because there's no need because the connection between the requester and the issuer becomes direct. So that's where middleman gets erased.
Uh-huh. Okay, interesting, interesting. And what are the risks? Because I guess there could be some potential risks or concerns, right, about this that could make you get you some resistance from parties, right?
Yeah, I mean, the risk is more on there's, okay, everything that is new is always risky, right? Why
Uh-huh.
is it
Uh-huh.
always risky? Because we as humans like to go on reiteration. We reiterative human beings, right? We're beings that like to go to the same spot because it's the spot that we know. That's what
Uh-huh.
builds trust. That's why we hang out with the same people because it's the
Uh-huh.
one that we know. So when you have to apply a new layer of novelty, it's always kind of like, but the old thing works. Why are you changing? And it's
Mhm.
just a matter of adaptability. And we humans tend to not be so adaptive because we have become lazy and we have become social beings that like to just move around our same street and now our own house. So when we do forget that it's just a matter of novelty and adaptability, technology, what it's trying to accomplish to us is just efficiency in processes. So when we apply blockchain to say we're going to revolutionize how companies transmit or how security or financial instruments go, people go crazy. And it's like, no, but I like it how it works. It's not that they like it how it works, it's just that they have never experienced the new thing. So they
Uh-huh.
go against it. And also because new thing and technology tend to innovate, many people will have to adapt to new jobs. The middleman cease to exist. So it's kind of like there's a whole revolution. So people go crazy. And they're like,
Uh-huh.
no, you're going against everything that I understand. And that's
Uh-huh.
where it's kind of like it's not the risk factor because everything is risky. Even right now, banking institutions can be risky. Even
Uh-huh.
now, governments can be risky.
Yeah.
So why is technology risky? It's just a matter of trying it. Yeah.
Mm. Sure, sure. Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting what you share, it's the human mindset, right? That we are afraid. And now with AI as well, I think we have similar concerns. So, about getting jobs, getting out and all that stuff, right? So,
Absolutely.
all right. What are the main challenges, Edwin, that you are facing now in terms of your business, particularly?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to that kind of like we're innovating on something very standardized. And it's
Hmm.
not that we think that we can change the whole security markets or how stocks work or how debt work or these kind of things. It's just a matter of us providing a new layer of efficiency because things without intermediary tend to be with less friction, less fees. So it's better for the requester saying, hey, I have equity. Come on, Joshi and friends, jump
Uh-huh.
on board. Let me sell you some shares. Let's make it efficient. Let's crowdfund. Let's bring all these new players. So that's what we're trying to teach. It's just like we're not revolving what it existed. It's just that we understand how it was done, and we're just
Hmm.
saying technology can make it more efficient. But the bot comes because of that kind of like, oh, well, what you're doing is illegal. No, it's not illegal. It's just that that's what is being pushed into the market, but what we're doing is completely legal as many other fields. We can go for like Airbnb. I bet hotels still do it and say that's illegal because they don't have a hotel license. And it's
Hmm.
like, no, you're pushing the narrative that it's illegal because some retail housing, when they started to rent their house, or Uber, no, that's illegal. They don't have a taxi
I was
license.
thinking as
It's
well, as well. Hmm. Hmm.
so it's kind of like the narrative of the well established that says, no, you're screwing my market. Get out. That's kind of
Uh,
like the real message that is being transmitted.
Sure. And blockchains and all this stuff has been already for some time, right? So, what has been then? So, is this the resistance that you are describing that is making the implementation much difficult that, for instance, Uber or Airbnb that you just defined now?
Yeah, I mean, this is a matter of kind of like that ledger, right? Because we are just, it's called something about silos. So, for example, when you have a company, you have a silo. You own all the data, you own all the information. So, you
Hmm.
want to do business with me, you have to ask me. It's like, hey, can I have access to that information or to that data? And then maybe I supply it. And then suddenly blockchain came and said, like, all data is evenly spread throughout the network. So any person doesn't have to go to Edwin, who created the data. It already became part of that public knowledge. So that information, it's kind of like it's changing various things because it's like, what do I do with this information now? You do a lot. For example, banking. Why do you
Uh-huh.
go to the bank to secure a deposit? Because nowadays it's kind of like the best, it's one of the most common vehicles for you to deposit your money to
Mhm.
get some interest on top, because this is
Uh,
kind of like the certainty.
Uh-huh.
Now, with blockchain, let's say that you can go straight to the market and say, hey, market, I'm gonna give you my 1,000 euros, and the market itself is gonna play with 1,000 euros, and then I'll get the interest back. But we're not talking about the same interest at the bank. Because, for example, when you lend money to the bank, you only get a tiny percentage of all the money that they make on top of your money because it's their business. So here we
Or,
come and say, like, maybe we don't need the bank in certain situations. We can go straight to the market and us get all the fees that the bank will do. That's the theoretical. There's obviously a lot of practicality with it, but it's
uh-huh.
kind of like we're opening possibilities for one to generate income on its own, to generate its own deposit, to generate its own markets. So that kind of crushes everything that we know because we think that the bank is the only enabler of yeah,
Mhm.
of income or interest on top of our money. But in reality, no, we can be ourselves.
Hmm. So then it's finally a change of mindset, and again, and I guess that as you define it and describe it, it's harder to implement in this occasion because the ones that are in charge of these systems are kind of the ones in the top of the pyramid, let's say on the hierarchical pyramid, right? So there are banks, governments, people that may be afraid of give their power out to this kind of technology, right? Is that okay? That makes sense.
Yeah, no, I
Uh,
mean, absolutely.
uh,
So right now we're in change of that paradigm. It happened with cryptocurrencies, regardless of what they are or not. I mean, it's just a novelty. So it's kind of like if I am the owner of the institution for depositing money and getting interest, me being the bank, and if somebody says like, I can do a more efficient job than you, then Revolut came, and that's what I was like, oh, neo banking is like, wait a second, don't enter here because I am the guy who knows it. But then the neo banking is like, hey, no, but I can know it too. It's like now it's open. And then we have the new ledger, and it's like maybe we don't even need the bank. Maybe me, Edwin Mata, can be my own bank. So it's kind of like we are just establishing the fractionalization of these kind of situations where we think an entity is the only provider of services. But now
Mm,
we're going to the publicity and say like, I can be my own provider because in one click, I enter the market. Like, I don't need you anymore because the bank was the only generator of possibilities because they had all the structure. And now with
uh-huh,
this public information being out there, public structures are being created. So it's kind of like, I don't need you because that is already a public structure I can go directly to.
uh-huh. That's interesting. I love Revolut, by the way. I always use it for a long time.
Yeah, I guess
Uh, uh,
who
uh,
doesn't have Revolut nowadays? It's like I don't even know.
yeah, right. I was wondering, so how your days look like, right? Because if you cannot go to the governments or you cannot go to the bank systems to change something that it will not benefit them, right? Because at the end, Airbnb or Uber didn't go to the taxis licenses or the hotels to convince them that they are doing a better service or for lower money. So I was wondering, do you go to businesses and say, look, this is something new, and you don't need this bank or you don't need this government or whatever to make the things that you want.
Yeah, so I mean, in our sector where you are obviously challenging the status quo, the
Hmm.
first thing you gotta do is educate the market, no? So you go through that desert and say like, I'm gonna walk here for 2 years until I show you that the oasis at the end was true. So it's kind of like, you're cool off, and then it's like, no, wait a second, let me go. So it's kind of like that ongoing. At the end, they when you're maybe too a little bit too early, they always like, oh, okay, I'm gonna wait a bit and see how the trend works. Now we're in that year where like institutionals are jumping in what we're doing, which is a tokenization. So banks are trying to create digital assets, funds are starting to focus on digital assets or being a digital asset themselves. So it's kind of like those you go back in time and say like, oh, but look at those educators, the crazy people that said that this will happen. Maybe there was some truth. Now we're sowing the seeds because for a long time we were more on the educative side, saying, hey, this is a possibility. Just think about it. They were like, I like it. The concept makes a lot of sense. But then again, we'll go back to but is it legal? I'm not so sure. But my lawyer says it's not legal. So it's kind of like we have to keep educating. Now we have regulations jumping in and establishing wording in the clauses. DLT appears in a security law, so that's crazy because it's kind of like I'm not telling you. It's kind of like we're all getting ready for this new step. So our message now we're just getting a lot of receipts, kind of like back because we were shooting messages across channels, across the
Uh-huh.
universe. We were like, let's see, let's push the message in the bottle and see who receives it. And now we're getting those receipts, kind of like, hey, I heard in the news that there's this bank of Switzerland who tokenized its equity. How is that possible? And like, I told you. I mean, now the bank is doing it. So why are
Uh-huh.
you not doing it? So that's kind of like our day to day, kind of like we continuously shoot messages, we continuously educate, we continuously have meetings with clients, now institutional. We have even collaborated in some sense with the government because obviously they're the main player.
Uh-huh.
So it's kind of like that's why we all became professors here in this in our startup Brickken. It's just because from day one we had to educate the market on what we thought was to come, and now we're telling them, I'm not educating you anymore in the future. Now just read the newspaper and check what is happening. So that's kind
Uh-huh.
of like they're doing it now. So are you jumping in?
All right, that's really cool, eh? So it has to be very challenging at the start, Edwin, I imagine, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if it was easy, everybody would do it. You know what they say.
Definitely, yeah. No, that's interesting. And what would you say it was the biggest challenge that you had overcome, throughout all these challenges that you probably faced?
Could you repeat? I lost you.
Yes, Edwin, I was asking what was the biggest challenge that you had to overcome in order to reach to the point that you are now here in this moment?
Obviously, I mean, with a startup, it's funding, so you have to go bootstrap, then find whatever resources to continue.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like the challenge for early startups. It's kind of like that 2 3 year, whether you make it or not. So it's kind of like it's it's a very rough position because
Mhm.
you're always fighting against the current, no matter what sector you are. Maybe you can be super good, but then whatever happens, it's kind of like the 2 3 years are crucial for survival. So we are
Mhm.
now nearing the 3 year term. So we're not even on that side yet. Because after the 3 year, there's bigger chances like, oh, you just win this. And then the other startups on the other side of the 3 year is like, welcome to the club of the survivalists, kind of like
Mhm. Yeah.
we're there. We're nearing the 3 year term exactly how we do it on the book. Kind of like either you make it or you die.
All right, that's very good. Cool. All right, we are almost 9 minutes left, Edwin, and I wanted to know what would you share, with future startups or current startups and entrepreneurs? What would you say are your biggest lessons learned that you could share with us?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like yeah, my biggest teaching that I could tell to anyone is the one that he asked me a lot. It's kind of like, hey, do you have some advice on how you landed here? Yeah, and take all no's as yes and take all yes as no. I mean, you have to fight absolutely everything. Just because someone says no does not mean that the rest persons can say yes, and just because one person said yes does not mean that they all gonna continuously say yes. So you have to just continuously be adapting and just pursuing, kind of like don't fall with the trend, don't fall with whatever anybody says. So in the end, the only thing that matters is how resilient you are and how easily you can maneuver all this information, all these problems, all this success, because you can even die of success. And it's crazy, it's like, how do you die of success? A lot of startups have died of success. They say, like, I'm gonna cross the world, raise 100 million. Oh, I don't have the KPIs for my next thing. I just don't have any more money. It's like, yeah, he died of success. So it's kind of like you just have to stick to your guns. And what are your guns? The ones you start developing, analyzing, obtain all your data, survey all the people, gather all the feedback. But in the end, the only thing that matters is if you're an expert at what you say you're an expert at, then don't gather that all the information as the same expertise as you have. Just analyze it, but the true probably know-how lies in you and your team and your company. So the rest is something that you just have to adapt to be likable by everybody. But that's kind of like how easy it is for you to adapt. So adaptability is super crucial when you're a startup.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Very good. Thank you so much for sharing that, Edwin. I was thinking, that in your field, especially, I think it has to be more challenging, no, in the sense that you just shared today in today's interview. So, what makes you to stick to your guns, and what makes you to have this resilience, right, and this grit to continuously pushing, right?
Yeah, I mean, in the end, obviously my journey is not alone. We have a team, we have co-founders, we have employees. So it's kind of like sometimes easy to get lost in the outcome when inside you already have kind of like that push. So sometimes you have to look inside and say like, oh, look at what we're building. If a client commits, it's like that's a win. If we land some kind of opportunity, we take it as a win. So instead of us at the beginning wanting to go for like the huge win and say like, oh, we made it, we just now going step by step. And in the
Mm-hmm.
outside, obviously, I don't think sometimes, especially in blockchain with 2022 and everything that happened, the big crashes and everything like us builders, and it's a mutual feeling that sometimes I start with another founder. It's like we feel like punching backs because we were like the cool kids on the block a couple of years ago, and now we're like, oh, but that's a scam because everybody scams in blockchain, and it's like, no. So we have to fight twice as hard, right? So it's kind of like, but in the end, you just continue.
I love it. I was wondering, did you do any mindset or coaching thing because your mind is like really cool down, with these things. So I was wondering.
Uh, I mean, a punching bag for a couple of years of blockchain, you just like, that's it. It's just like seriously. I have a joke with actually with my girlfriend. It's like, yeah, I can see like the earthquake and the world dying, and I will still be playing my Call of Duty. I'll be like, whatever. I mean, it's over. I don't care. It's just like, just you just have to enjoy it somehow.
It's funny, it's funny. No, I love it. I love the attitude because it's what we teach in our programs as well. So it's like, we cannot change the environment, but we will try, and we do our best. And it's have this kind of neutrality, right? For success and for failures or for rejections, right? Is what keep us continuing and doing what we love, right? So yeah,
Yeah,
thank you. Thank
exactly.
you for sharing that, Edwin. I really appreciate it. So we
No
are in
problem.
the end of the interview. 4 minutes left, Edwin. So I was wondering, do you have anything to share that we haven't covered yet?
No, I mean, just as a last outcome. If somebody's gonna start something, I
Hmm.
I learned this various months on the journey, and it's do spend some time with people who has failed. They can probably give you better advice than the one who has win. And why is that? Because sometimes the one who has win, there's something in life called luck, and it's
Uh-huh.
sometimes they were on the luck of things, or sometimes they did something that just happened. So you cannot say that everybody's going to be success based on that guy who wakes up at 6 a.m., does yoga for 30 minutes, listen to a podcast the first hour, and like that's the journey of someone. But I then learned to talk to other people who had been on the journey and they failed, and they taught me way more because you can learn what happened or why they think they fail, or maybe it was the market, or maybe it was more, and they were more. Um, it's kind of like when you're like rich and famous, you're like, "Ah, everybody wants to talk to me. I don't have time." But when you're the guy who really stumbled onto a rock and fell down, and somebody asks you, "Hey, where you went?" You're like, "Oh, you want to know my story?" So there will be more open and lean for you to really ask the questions that matter. So
Oh
if
my
I
God.
may take
Yeah.
into consideration those who stumble, because probably they will give you a better advice.
That's very good. Yeah. You give me goosebumps.
Okay.
Yeah. Seriously,
Uh,
because it makes sense. The people who struggle the most, I think, and who fail the most are the ones who actually can learn a lot, right? And can share a lot of lessons learned. And I actually, my last post in last week was about this. It was Bill Gates, I think, who said is that the success is a lousy teacher. It doesn't teach us much. Because sometimes maybe you are lucky and you don't appreciate it, and you don't learn so much as the failures and the drawbacks or the things that you have done. So it's a very good advice. Thank you so much,
no
Edwin.
problem.
Now, I was wondering, I love this question. Okay, so if you could leave a huge message, something that you really love to the whole world, what it would be and why?
Oh wow. I mean, it depends. I don't know. I'm still struggling with it. I guess I'm gonna shoot myself a message, and we need to really love and understand that the little things matter. Not go for the whole outcome. And
Mhm.
sometimes if you can have a dinner with your friends, enjoy that half an hour, disconnect.
Uh,
So it's kind of like if I may, I'm gonna shoot myself that message, and it's like enjoy the little things. It's more simple.
I love it, man. Yeah, no, that can tell that your history and your experience, right? That finally the little things are the enjoyable, and then later we can get the other stuff. I think, right?
Yep, I agree.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. It was beautiful interview. I learned so much. Thank you for sharing your time and your lessons learned. Is there any last words that you want to say before we finish off?
No, it's fine. Thank you very much. So, like I said, thank you very much for having me, Jesse. Very insightful questions. I'm usually
Thank you.
used to like the more tech is like, so how you applying blockchain to your technology? What is the layer of doing things? I was like, oh my God. Like just read the white paper. It's like let's talk about the things that matter.
Definitely. No, no, definitely. I like to talk about this stuff, profound questions, because I think it's what really
That's it.
matters and it makes the difference, right? Thank you, Edwin, for the feedback. Yes, talk to you soon, mate. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very
Bye
much.
bye. Bye.